If I was any more average, I'd be a spreadsheet entry. Middle-class engineer, suburban house, reliable Honda in the driveway. But my wife, Elise, she's something else entirely. A pharmaceutical sales rep with ambition that could power a small city and looks that could sell ice to penguins. Which makes what I discovered all the more interesting. Another conference? I asked, watching her pack the same black suitcase she'd used for the last 6 trips. The Marriott tags were still attached from Boston, Chicago, and Atlanta. Always the same hotel chain. Always the same room upgrade she somehow managed to secure. You know how it is, Danny. She folded her silk blouses with practiced precision. Grant thinks these face-to-face meetings are crucial for the quarterly numbers. Grant Wilcox, her boss. 45, drives a black Mercedes, and has the kind of gym-sculpted physique that screams midlife crisis. He'd been Elise's mentor for the past year, ever since she joined the pharmaceutical company's elite sales division. Right, Grant. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her pack lingerie that definitely wasn't standard business attire. And he needs you there for emotional support, right? She paused, just for a second. It's complicated, Danny. The pharmaceutical world is cutthroat. Having someone you trust in high-pressure situations makes all the difference. Emotional support. That's what she called it. I had other names for it, but I kept those to myself. For now, the receipts told a different story. Hotel bills for adjoining suites, room service for 2, spa treatments, wine that cost more than my monthly car payment, and always the same handwritten note from the concierge. Thanks for choosing Marriott for your special occasion. Special occasion. Every month. Like clockwork. When will you be back? I asked, though I already knew the answer. 3 days. Always 3 days. Enough time for the conference sessions and whatever emotional support Grant required after hours. Friday evening, you know the drill. She zipped the suitcase and gave me that smile. The one that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me tired. Try not to burn the house down while I'm gone. I watched her load the Mercedes, Grant's company car, which he generously loaned her for airport runs. How thoughtful of him. How very supportive. After she left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and spread out the evidence I'd been collecting. Not digital surveillance or anything illegal, just public records, receipts she'd left in pants pockets, and overheard conversations from her end of phone calls. The pattern was undeniable. Every conference coincided with Grant's travel schedule. Every hotel upgrade happened to place them on the same floor. Every expense report showed meals for 2, charged to the company card Grant had authorized for her use. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Maddie, who happened to be one of Boston's most ruthless divorce attorneys. Coffee tomorrow? You sounded stressed last week. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, make it lunch. We need to talk. The next morning, I met Maddie at a quiet restaurant downtown. She took one look at my face and ordered us both double espressos. Spill it, she said, cutting straight through the pleasantries. And don't try to tell me this is about work stress. I know that look. I handed her a folder. Inside were copies of everything I'd found. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, travel itineraries that matched perfectly despite being booked separately. Maddie flipped through the pages, her expression growing grimmer with each document. How long has this been going on? 8 months, maybe longer. I only started paying attention when the neighbor made a joke at the barbecue last month. What kind of joke? Cindy Patterson said Elise was Grant's favorite +1. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but something about the way she said it. I shrugged. So I started noticing things. Maddie closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Danny, this is pretty damning evidence. But what do you want to do about it? Confrontation? Counseling? Or are we talking about the nuclear option? What's the nuclear option look like? Complete asset protection, strategic separation, and making sure you come out of this with everything you're entitled to, plus interest. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I don't like cheaters, Danny, especially ones who use company resources to fund their affairs. She calls it emotional support. I call it grounds for a very favorable settlement. Maddie pulled out her phone. I'm going to need you to document everything. Bank accounts, property titles, investment portfolios. And I mean everything. What about confronting her? Why tip your hand? She's comfortable in her routine. Let her stay comfortable while we prepare. Maddie's eyes gleamed with professional satisfaction. Trust me, little brother. When we're ready to move, she won't know what hit her. That afternoon, I drove to a storage facility across town and rented a unit under my name only. Then I visited 3 different banks and opened individual accounts, transferring small amounts from our joint savings. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would trigger alerts or questions. I also made an appointment with a moving company for the following week. Professional, discreet, and available on short notice. By Thursday evening, I had everything arranged. Boxes staged in the storage unit, new apartment lease signed, legal documents prepared, and waiting for signatures. Elise called that night from her hotel room. "How's the conference?" I asked, settling into my favorite chair for what I knew would be our last conversation as a married couple living under the same roof. Exhausting. Grant's pushing everyone hard to hit the quarterly targets. Her voice sounded relaxed, happy even. But the team dinner was nice. We went to this amazing steakhouse. Team dinner. For 2 people. At a restaurant that specialized in romantic lighting and private booths. Sounds lovely. When does your flight get in tomorrow? 6:30. I'll probably grab dinner at the airport, so don't wait up. Actually, I might not be here when you get back. Work emergency came up. Structural issue with the Pemberton project. It wasn't entirely a lie. There was a structural issue, just not with the building. Oh, okay. Well, I'll see you when I see you then. Yeah, see you when I see you. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house and made a list of everything I wanted to take. Personal items, family photos, my father's tools, the books Elise had always complained about, everything that mattered to me and nothing that legally belonged to her. The movers would arrive at 8 a.m. By the time Elise's plane touched down, the house would be empty except for her belongings and the furniture we'd bought together. I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey and raised it in a toast to the empty room. Support yourself now, Elise. That's all you have left. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you believe in fresh starts. I was up at dawn, coffee in hand, watching from the kitchen window as my neighbors began their daily routines. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that today would be the day Daniel Price finally grew a backbone. The moving truck pulled up at exactly 8 a.m. 3 guys who looked like they could relocate a small mountain if properly motivated. I'd paid extra for speed and discretion, and they delivered on both counts. Just the items on the list, I told the crew chief, handing him a detailed inventory. Nothing else gets touched. I'd been meticulous about what belonged to whom. My clothes, my books, my tools, my electronics, the wedding gifts from my side of the family, everything I'd owned before the marriage or purchased with my individual earnings. Legally bulletproof, according to Maddie. The furniture stayed, the shared purchases, the joint investments in home improvement, the kitchen appliances we'd chosen together. I wasn't interested in being petty about material things. This wasn't about stuff. This was about respect. While the movers worked, I handled the financial side of the operation. 3 banks, 4 accounts, and one very thorough liquidation of everything that had both our names on it. Joint savings, joint checking, the money market account we'd been building for our someday house upgrade. Every penny went into accounts with only my name attached. Legal, since I was an authorized signatory on everything. Ethical, since half of it was mine anyway. And satisfying in a way that surprised me with its intensity. The bank manager at our primary institution, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled our accounts for 5 years, raised an eyebrow when I requested the transfers. "Is Mrs. Price aware of these transactions, Mr. Price?" "Mrs. Price is currently out of town on business," I replied, which was technically true. "These are standard portfolio adjustments we discussed before she left." Another technical truth. We had discussed money before she left. She'd mentioned needing cash for conference expenses, and I'd assured her that our accounts were perfectly liquid. Patricia processed the paperwork without further questions. Professional courtesy, or maybe she'd seen this particular dance before. Either way, by noon on Friday, Elise's access to our joint resources had been effectively terminated. The house clearance took 4 hours, methodical, professional, and thorough. My entire life packed into boxes and loaded onto a truck, leaving behind only the ghost outline of where furniture had stood and the faint echo of better times. I walked through the empty rooms one last time, checking for anything I'd missed. In our bedroom, her bedroom now, I found the hotel receipt that had started this whole process, the one with Grant's handwritten note about last night, tucked between the mattress and box spring. I left it on her pillow, a little reminder of what emotional support actually cost. The final touch was the note. I'd written and rewritten it a dozen times, trying to find the right balance between explanation and accusation. In the end, I settled for simplicity. Support yourself now. 4 words on a single sheet of paper, left on the kitchen counter where she'd be sure to find it. No signature needed. She'd know who it was from. I locked the door behind me and slipped the key through the mail slot. Let her figure out how to get inside. Let her experience that moment of confusion when familiar things suddenly become obstacles. My new apartment was across town, a furnished place with a month-to-month lease and no emotional baggage. I spent Friday evening unpacking the essentials and setting up my temporary life. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Elise's flight was scheduled to land at 6:30. I imagined her collecting her luggage, maybe texting Grant about the successful conference, planning their next business trip. I imagined her driving home in his company car, thinking about dinner and weekend plans and all the comfortable routines of her double life. I imagined her key turning in the lock, the door opening onto emptiness. My phone started ringing at 7:15. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 7:20 and 7:25 and 7:30. By 8 o'clock, she'd left 6 messages. I played them back while eating Chinese takeout from containers that had never seen the inside of her kitchen. Danny, where are you? The house is... Call me back. Danny, this isn't funny. Where's all our stuff? Call me right now. What the hell is going on? Why is everything gone? Call me. I found your note. What does that even mean? We need to talk about this like adults. Fine. Don't answer. But this is insane, Danny. You can't just disappear. We're married. I'm calling Maddie. If you won't talk to me, maybe you'll talk to your sister. That last message made me smile. Elise calling Maddie for support was like a mouse asking a hawk for relationship advice. This was going to be entertaining. Sure enough, my phone rang again at 8:30. Maddie's number. Hello, sister dear. Danny, I have a very upset woman on my other line demanding to know where her husband went. Should I tell her, or would you prefer to handle this yourself? What did you tell her? That I'm your attorney now, and all communication should go through proper legal channels. Maddie's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who just delivered a particularly elegant checkmate. She's not happy about that. I imagine not. How did she sound? Panicked, angry, and completely unprepared for this level of strategic thinking. Maddie paused. She kept mentioning emotional support. What's that about? That's what she calls her affair with Grant. Emotional support. Ah, well, she's about to learn what actual emotional support costs. Specifically about half of everything she thought she owned. I finished my Chinese food and settled back in my new chair, looking out the window at a neighborhood where no one knew my name or my business. Tomorrow, Elise would start making calls, to friends, to family, to anyone who might help her understand how her perfectly managed life had suddenly come apart. But tonight, she was alone in an empty house, holding a note that said everything she needed to know about the future of our marriage. Support yourself now, Elise, I said to the empty apartment. Let's see how much emotional support Grant provides when the conference is over. Saturday morning brought the kind of silence that only comes from having your phone turned off for 12 hours. When I finally powered it back on, the screen lit up like a Christmas tree. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and enough voicemails to fill a small novel. I made coffee and settled in to review the overnight communications from my soon-to-be ex-wife. The text started desperate and escalated to furious. Danny, please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. The bank says you closed our accounts? How is that even legal? This is insane. You can't just disappear because you're having some kind of breakdown. Grant says I should call the police. This feels like kidnapping or something, Grant says. That was interesting. So she'd already called her boss/lover for advice. I wondered what kind of emotional support he'd offered when she explained that her husband had vanished along with their entire household. The final text, sent at 2 a.m., was the most revealing. I know you think something is going on with Grant, but you're wrong. We're just friends. Good friends who work together, that's all. Please come home so we can talk about this like rational people. Just friends, who shared hotel rooms and charged romantic dinners to company accounts, who exchanged handwritten notes about last night and coordinated their travel schedules with mathematical precision. I was still reading through the messages when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Danny, thank God. It's me. Elise. Calling from someone else's phone, probably because I'd been ignoring her calls. Hello, Elise. How was your conference? Don't do that. Don't pretend this is a normal conversation. Where are you? Why did you take everything? Why did you empty our bank accounts? I took my things, I said calmly, and I moved my money to accounts where I won't have to worry about unauthorized conference expenses. Silence on the other end. Then, what's that supposed to mean? It means I've seen the receipts, Elise. The hotel bills, the restaurant charges, the spa treatments. All that emotional support you've been providing Grant must be exhausting. More silence. Longer this time. Danny, you're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Help me understand then. Explain how business conferences require adjoining hotel suites. Explain how emotional support includes champagne and couples massages. It's not what you think. Then what is it exactly? because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been using our joint accounts to fund an affair with your boss. But please enlighten me about the professional necessity of lingerie shopping in Chicago." I heard her take a shaky breath. "We need to talk about this in person, face to face, like married people." Married people don't lie to each other about business trips, Elise. Married people don't call affairs emotional support and expect their spouses to pay for the privilege. Where are you staying? Somewhere safe, somewhere honest, somewhere I don't have to wonder what receipts I'll find in the laundry. Danny, please, I know you're hurt, but this isn't the way to handle it. We can work through this. We can get counseling. We can get divorced, I replied. My attorney will be in touch with the paperwork. Your attorney? Maddie's representing you? Against me? Maddie's representing me in favor of me. There's a difference. I hung up and immediately called my sister. How's our girl handling her new reality? Maddie asked without preamble. About as well as you'd expect. She wants to talk, work things out, get counseling, the usual script. And Grant? Any word from the emotional support department? She mentioned that he suggested calling the police. Apparently liquidating your own bank accounts constitutes kidnapping in his professional opinion. Maddie laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Oh, this is going to be fun. I've been doing some research on Mr. Wilcox. Did you know he's married? I assumed. Most men his age are. Victoria Wilcox, prominent family, old money, sits on the boards of 3 charities and the country club membership committee. Maddie's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who just found the perfect pressure point. I wonder how she'd feel about her husband's innovative approach to employee mentorship. You wouldn't. I wouldn't what? Share information about potential workplace harassment with concerned parties? Danny, I'm shocked you'd suggest such a thing. That afternoon, I drove past our old neighborhood. Not to the house. I wasn't ready for that particular confrontation, but through the surrounding streets where gossip flowed like water and everyone knew everyone else's business. The Pattersons were outside washing their car. Cindy waved me over with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting all day for fresh information. Danny, we saw the moving truck yesterday. Are you and Elise renovating? Something like that, I replied. Actually, we're taking some time apart, reassessing our priorities. Cindy's eyes lit up like someone had just handed her a winning lottery ticket. Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything all right? Just some differences in how we view marriage. Elise has been spending a lot of time with her boss lately. Emotional support, she calls it. I call it something else. I didn't have to say more. Cindy's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding to barely contained excitement. By evening, half the neighborhood would know that the prices were separated and Elise had been conducting some kind of inappropriate relationship with her supervisor. Well, Cindy said carefully, I always thought she seemed very dedicated to her work. Dedicated. That's one word for it. I left Cindy to draw her own conclusions and spread her own interpretations. In a neighborhood like ours, reputation was currency, and I just made a significant withdrawal from Elise's account. Sunday brought a new development. Elise showed up at my sister's office. Maddie called me immediately afterward, her voice bubbling with professional amusement. Your wife just tried to hire me to represent her in the divorce. You're kidding. I wish I was. She walked into my office this morning, sat down in my conference room, and asked me to help her make sense of Danny's behavior and protect her interests in what she's calling a temporary separation. What did you tell her? That I already have a client in this matter, and his interests are my only concern. Then I handed her a list of other divorce attorneys and suggested she choose quickly. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. She accused me of bias, unprofessionalism, and family favoritism. Then she asked me to explain how you could legally empty joint accounts without her permission. And? I explained that authorized signatories can access accounts at their discretion and that community property laws are more complex than most people realize. I also mentioned that evidence of marital misconduct can significantly impact settlement negotiations. Did you mention Grant specifically? I didn't have to. She brought him up herself, kept insisting that their relationship was purely professional and that you were misinterpreting normal workplace dynamics. Normal workplace dynamics. That was a new phrase for it. So what's next? Next, she hires her own attorney and we begin formal proceedings. But Danny, I want you to be prepared for escalation. She's not going to accept this quietly, and neither is Grant. They're both going to fight back. Let them fight. I'm not the one with something to hide. But even as I said it, I knew Maddie was right. Elise wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and Grant had too much to lose to let the situation resolve quietly. The real battle was just beginning. Monday morning brought the first shot across the bow. I was at my temporary office, a coffee shop with reliable Wi-Fi and no emotional baggage, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Grant Wilcox. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park at noon. Come alone." I showed the message to Maddie, who was reviewing divorce paperwork at the table across from me. "He's panicking," she said with satisfaction. "Men like Grant don't request private meetings unless they're desperate to control the narrative." "Should I go?" "Absolutely, but not alone." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my investigator. He'll be close enough to document whatever Grant thinks he's going to accomplish." At 11:30, I drove to Riverside Park and found a bench near the walking trail. The investigator, a former police detective named Jim Crawford, was already in position with a telephoto lens and recording equipment. Grant arrived at exactly noon, driving his black Mercedes with the kind of aggressive precision that suggested he was barely containing his anger. He parked illegally in a handicapped space and stalked over to my bench like a man with something to prove. "Danny." He sat down without being invited, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne and see the stress lines around his eyes. "We need to clear the air about this situation." "What situation is that, Grant?" "Don't play games. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This whole disappearing act, emptying bank accounts, spreading rumors about Elise and me." "I haven't spread any rumors. I've simply stopped pretending I don't know what's been going on." Grant leaned closer, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was an intimidating whisper. "Nothing has been going on. Elise is a valued employee who requires additional support in high-pressure situations. That's all. Emotional support. Professional support. The pharmaceutical industry is cutthroat, Danny. Elise needed mentorship, guidance, someone she could trust in difficult negotiations. And that required adjoining hotel rooms. That required availability. When deals are happening in real time, I need my people accessible." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of one of the receipts. Couples massage, champagne service, romantic dinner reservations. That's some very hands-on mentorship, Grant. His jaw tightened. "You're taking things out of context." "Then provide some context. Explain how a business relationship requires the kind of expenses most people reserve for anniversaries." Grant stood up abruptly, his composure finally cracking. "You want context? Here's context. Elise is brilliant at her job, but she lacks confidence in high-stakes situations. She needed someone to believe in her, support her, help her reach her potential. In a hotel room, at company expense. The location is irrelevant. The relationship is professional. The relationship is adultery, Grant, and you've been using company resources to fund it." That hit home. Grant's face went pale, and I could see him calculating the implications. Company resources meant potential legal exposure. It meant HR investigations and board inquiries and the kind of scrutiny that could end careers. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I know enough. I know you've been manipulating your position to conduct an affair with a subordinate. I know you've been charging personal expenses to company accounts. And I know your wife Victoria would be very interested in your innovative approach to employee development." Grant's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Instead, he leaned down and spoke in a voice that dripped with barely contained rage. "If you think you can threaten me, you're making a serious mistake. I have resources you can't imagine, Danny. Connections, influence, the ability to make your life very difficult. More difficult than discovering your wife is having an affair? More difficult than losing your job, your reputation, your ability to work in the city? I can make one phone call and ensure you never get another engineering contract." I stood up to face him and realized I wasn't afraid. Maybe it was the knowledge that Jim was recording everything. Maybe it was the certainty that I held all the cards. Or maybe it was just the relief of finally confronting the man who'd been stealing my wife. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Make your calls, use your influence. But while you're doing that, I'll be sharing these receipts with your wife, your HR department, and anyone else who might be interested in how you conduct business." Grant's face went from pale to flushed. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Let's find out." I pulled out my phone again and started scrolling through my contacts. "I believe Victoria Wilcox is on the country club membership committee, isn't she? I wonder if they have a code of conduct for members' spouses." "Stop. Or maybe I should start with your company's ethics hotline. I'm sure they'd be fascinated by your expense reports." I said stop. "Why? I thought you wanted to clear the air. Let's clear all of it." Grant grabbed my wrist, trying to take the phone. It was exactly the kind of aggressive move that looked terrible on camera and worse in court. "Let go of me, Grant." "Delete those photos." "No." "Delete them." His voice carried across the park, drawing attention from other visitors. An elderly couple walking their dog stopped to stare. A jogger slowed down to see what the commotion was about. "You're making a scene," I said quietly. "Is this the kind of emotional support you provide Elise? Physical intimidation when things don't go your way?" Grant released my wrist like it was on fire. He looked around at the growing audience and seemed to realize how badly he'd miscalculated. "This isn't over," he said, backing away. "Yes, it is. Your relationship with my wife ends now. The company expenses end now. The emotional support ends now." I held up my phone. "Unless you'd prefer to explain your mentorship techniques to Victoria in person?" Grant turned and walked back to his Mercedes without another word. He drove away with the kind of reckless speed that suggested panic, leaving me alone on the bench with the satisfaction of a job well done. Jim Crawford appeared a few minutes later, grinning like someone who'd just won the lottery. "Did you get all that?" "Every word, every gesture, every threat. Your brother-in-law is going to love this footage. Maddie's going to love it even more." That evening, Elise called from what sounded like a restaurant or bar. Background noise, clinking glasses, the murmur of other conversations. "Danny, we need to stop this. Grant is talking about lawyers, about protecting the company's interests. This is getting out of hand." "Where are you calling from?" "That's not important. What's important is that you're destroying people's lives over a misunderstanding." "Whose life am I destroying, exactly?" "Grant's marriage is in trouble because of your accusations. His job is at risk. Victoria is asking questions he can't answer. Maybe he should have thought about that before he started providing emotional support in hotel rooms." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Elise? Help me understand how a professional relationship requires couples massages and champagne service." Silence. Then, "You're being deliberately cruel." "I'm being deliberately honest. There's a difference. Grant says you threatened him today, that you're trying to blackmail him." Grant grabbed my wrist and demanded I delete evidence of his misconduct. "I'd call that assault, not blackmail." More silence. Longer this time. "Elise, are you still there?" "I'm here. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it. That's the point. Some things, once broken, don't get repaired. They get replaced." "With what? What are you replacing our marriage with, Danny? Anger? Revenge? The satisfaction of destroying everyone around you?" "I'm replacing it with honesty, with self-respect, with a life where I don't have to pretend my wife's business trips are actually business. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every lie, every receipt, every time you came home from a conference and told me about the team dinners and networking events. You hurt me every day for 8 months, Elise. The only difference is now you have to face the consequences." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my temporary apartment, looking out at a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities and realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Tuesday brought news that Victoria Wilcox had filed for divorce. Maddie called me at 7 a.m. with updates from her network of legal contacts. "She's not messing around," Maddie reported with obvious admiration. "Hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, froze all joint accounts, and filed for an emergency restraining order to keep Grant away from their house." That was fast. Victoria's not the type to waste time once she has all the facts. Apparently your little confrontation with Grant yesterday was the final piece of evidence she needed. What evidence? Jim's recording. I may have shared it with Victoria's attorney as a professional courtesy. You know, one legal professional helping another understand the full scope of marital misconduct. I had to admire my sister's strategic thinking. By sharing the recording with Victoria's lawyer instead of Victoria directly, she'd ensured it would be properly documented and legally admissible while maintaining plausible deniability about her motives. How's Grant handling his new reality? Not well. He called in sick to work yesterday and hasn't been answering his phone. Word is that HR has opened an investigation into his expense accounts and management practices. And Elise? Radio silence since last night, but I'm guessing she's about to have a very interesting day. Maddie was right. By noon, the pharmaceutical company's human resources department had suspended Grant, pending a full investigation into potential misconduct. By 2 p.m., Elise had been called in for questioning about her role in the alleged violations. I learned all this from Cindy Patterson, who'd somehow developed a network of information sources that would make the CIA jealous. "My cousin works in HR at the pharmaceutical company," she explained when I ran into her at the grocery store. She says they're reviewing all of Grant's expense reports and travel authorizations. Apparently, there are some serious questions about policy violations. Policy violations? Relationships between supervisors and subordinates, misuse of company resources, that sort of thing. Cindy leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They're also looking into whether Elise received preferential treatment in terms of promotions and assignments. That evening, Elise showed up at my temporary apartment. I watched through the window as she sat in her car for 10 minutes, apparently gathering courage for whatever conversation she thought we were going to have. When she finally knocked, I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "We need to talk," she said. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect appearance showing cracks around the edges. "About what?" "About calling off your attack dogs. About ending this campaign of destruction before it ruins everyone involved." "I don't have any attack dogs, Elise. I have evidence, and other people have been drawing their own conclusions." Victoria filed for divorce. Grant's been suspended from work. They're questioning me like I'm some kind of criminal. "Are you?" "Am I what?" "A criminal. Did you violate company policies? Did you accept benefits based on your personal relationship with your supervisor? Did you help Grant misappropriate company resources?" She stared at me for a long moment. "You really want to destroy me, don't you?" "I want you to face the consequences of your choices. There's a difference." "What choices? What did I do that was so terrible?" "You had an affair, Elise. You lied to me for 8 months. You used our joint accounts to fund romantic getaways with your boss. You called it emotional support and expected me to smile and pay the bills. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just developed over time." "What developed? The lying or the affair?" "The feelings. Grant and we connected on a professional level first. The personal stuff came later." "The personal stuff. Is that what you call it when you're sharing hotel rooms and charging couples massages to company accounts?" Elise's composure finally cracked. "Fine. Yes, we were having an affair. Yes, I lied to you about the business trips. Yes, I used company resources inappropriately. Are you happy now?" "I'm satisfied that we're finally being honest with each other." "Honest? You want honest?" "Here's honest. Grant made me feel valued, appreciated, like I was capable of more than just being your wife in your little suburban life. He saw potential in me that you never bothered to notice." "I saw potential in you too, Elise. I just didn't think it required hotel rooms to develop." "You don't understand what it's like in the corporate world. The pressure, the competition, the need to prove yourself constantly." "You're right. I don't understand how corporate pressure requires adultery. Maybe you could explain that part." She turned away, staring out at the parking lot. "It wasn't supposed to be adultery. It was supposed to be support. Professional and personal support from someone who understood my ambitions. Support that happened to include romantic dinners and shared accommodations. The romantic stuff was it was part of the relationship. When you're working closely with someone, when you're traveling together, when you're supporting each other through difficult situations, you develop feelings. Yes. And you act on those feelings. Yes. While lying to your husband about the nature of the relationship. Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "And now you want me to help you avoid the consequences of those choices?" She turned back to face me, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I want you to remember that we were married for 6 years before any of this happened. I want you to remember that I'm not a monster, just someone who made mistakes. I remember all of it, Elise. The good years, the promises we made, the life we built together. That's what makes the betrayal so devastating. Then help me fix it. Call off Maddie, talk to Victoria's attorney, tell the HR people that you misunderstood the situation." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because it wouldn't be true, and because I'm done pretending that lies are acceptable as long as they're convenient." Elise wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, pulling herself back together with visible effort. "Fine. If you won't help me, I'll handle this myself. Grant and I will figure out how to manage the fallout." "Grant's a little busy with his own divorce right now." "We'll figure it out together. That's what people do when they care about each other. They support each other through difficult times." "Emotional support?" "Real support. The kind you never provided." She walked back to her car without saying goodbye. I watched her drive away and realized that this was probably the last honest conversation we'd ever have. Tomorrow the lawyers would take over and everything would become strategic rather than personal. But tonight, for the first time in 8 months, I knew exactly where my wife was and what she was doing. She was supporting herself. Finally. The storm hit Boston on a Thursday night in late October, bringing with it the kind of wind and rain that makes you grateful for solid walls and reliable roofs. I was in my temporary apartment, reviewing the divorce papers Maddie had prepared, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your house, 1 hour. Come alone. We end this tonight. Elise." Using someone else's phone again, probably because I'd been ignoring her calls for the past week. Since our last conversation, she'd hired an attorney and begun what Maddie described as a scorched earth approach to the divorce proceedings. I showed the message to Maddie, who was working late in my living room, surrounded by legal documents and empty coffee cups. "She's desperate," Maddie said, not looking up from her laptop. "Grant's divorce is final next week. He lost his job yesterday, and the company's threatening criminal charges for misappropriation of funds." "Criminal charges?" "Turns out your emotional support sessions cost the company about $40,000 in fraudulent expenses. The board is not amused." I stared at the text message, trying to decide whether this was a trap, a final plea for reconciliation, or something else entirely. Should I go? Absolutely not. Let her stew in that empty house with her thoughts and her consequences. But something about the message bothered me. The tone was different from Elise's usual communications, more direct, more decisive, less pleading, and more final. "I think I need to go." Maddie looked up from her laptop, her expression shifting from professional detachment to sisterly concern. "Danny, whatever she's planning, it's not going to be good for you. Desperate people make desperate choices. That's exactly why I need to go, to make sure she doesn't make any choices she can't come back from." The drive to my former house took 20 minutes through streets slick with rain and scattered with fallen branches. The neighborhood looked different in the storm, less suburban paradise and more like something from a Gothic novel. The house was dark, except for a single light in the kitchen window. Elise's car was in the driveway, along with a black Mercedes that I recognized as Grant's company vehicle. Apparently, "come alone" had been a suggestion rather than a requirement. I parked across the street and called Maddie. "Grant's here too," I reported. "This feels like an ambush. Get out of there, now." "Not yet. I need to know what they are planning." "Danny, I'm serious. Whatever this is, it's not going to end well." 5 minutes. If I'm not back in touch by then, call the police." I hung up before she could argue and walked through the rain to what used to be my front door. The key I'd returned was still under the flower pot where Elise had apparently left it for emergencies. I let myself in and called out. "Elise, you wanted to talk?" "In here." Her voice came from the kitchen, steady and calm. I found them sitting at the kitchen table like they were conducting a business meeting. Elise had changed since our last conversation. Her hair was pulled back severely, her makeup minimal, her expression harder than I'd ever seen it. Grant looked worse. Unshaven, rumpled, with the hollow-eyed appearance of someone who'd been drinking instead of sleeping. "Danny," Elise gestured to the empty chair across from them. "Sit down, we have a proposition." "I'm fine standing. What's the proposition?" "You drop the divorce proceedings, publicly recant your accusations about Grant and me, and help us repair the damage you've caused to our careers and reputations." "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for us not destroying you." I looked from Elise to Grant and back again. "Destroying me how?" Grant leaned forward, his eyes red and strained, but sharply focused. "I still have friends in this industry, Danny. People who owe me favors. One phone call and your engineering career is finished. No contracts, no references, no future in this city. You tried that threat once before. It didn't work then either." "That was before I lost everything," Grant replied. "Now I have nothing left to lose and every reason to make you pay for what you've done." Elise reached across the table and placed her hand over Grant's. "We've decided to fight back, Danny, together. We're not going to let you destroy our lives without consequences. Your lives were destroyed the moment you decided to have an affair and fund it with company money. I just documented the evidence. Evidence you obtained illegally. I obtained receipts from my wife's pockets and observed public behavior. Nothing illegal about that. Evidence you used to manipulate other people into taking action against us. I shared factual information with interested parties. What they chose to do with that information was their decision." Grant stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Enough games. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your sister tonight and tell her to withdraw the divorce papers. You're going to contact Victoria's attorney and admit you fabricated evidence against me, and you're going to help us both get our jobs back. Or what? Or we make your life a living hell. Professional sabotage, personal harassment, legal challenges to everything you try to do. We'll make you wish you'd never discovered those receipts." I looked around the empty kitchen, remembering all the meals Elise and I had shared here, all the conversations about our future, all the plans we'd made before Grant's emotional support became more important than our marriage vows. "You know what's interesting about threats, Grant? They only work if the person you're threatening has something left to lose." "You have plenty to lose." "Do I? I've already lost my wife, my house, my marriage, my trust in the person I thought I'd spend my life with. What exactly are you planning to take from me that hasn't already been taken?" Elise stood up now too, moving to stand beside Grant in what was clearly a rehearsed show of unity. We can take your career, your reputation, your ability to rebuild your life in this city. Go ahead. I'll rebuild somewhere else. We can make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Vindictive, manipulative, someone who destroys other people's happiness out of spite. Everyone already knows what kind of man I am, Elise. I'm the kind who documents evidence instead of ignoring it. The kind who faces consequences instead of running from them. The kind who tells the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Thunder crashed outside, loud enough to rattle the windows. The single kitchen light flickered, but held steady. "This is your last chance, Danny," Grant said. "Help us fix this, or we'll make you regret it for the rest of your life." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Maddie's number, already dialed, waiting for me to hit send. "Here's my counteroffer. You both leave this house right now, and I don't have my sister file harassment charges against you. You accept the consequences of your choices, and I'll accept the consequences of mine." "You're bluffing," Elise said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Let's find out." I pressed send and put the phone on speaker. "Danny?" Maddie's voice filled the kitchen. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, but I need you to document this conversation. Elise and Grant are here, and they're making threats about destroying my career and reputation if I don't withdraw the divorce papers and recant my evidence about their affair." "Are you recording this?" "I am now." I held up my phone, making sure both Elise and Grant could see the recording app. "Say hello to my attorney, you two." Grant's face went pale. "Turn that off." "Why? I thought you wanted to discuss consequences." "Let's discuss all of them." Elise grabbed Grant's arm. "We should go." "Yes, you should." I followed them toward the front door, phone still recording. "And Elise, don't contact me again except through legal channels. This marriage is over, and so is your emotional support system." They left without another word, driving away in Grant's Mercedes like they were fleeing a crime scene. I stood in the empty doorway, watching their taillights disappear into the storm, and realized that this was finally, truly over. No more confrontations, no more threats, no more attempts at reconciliation or revenge. Tomorrow, the lawyers would finish what we'd started tonight. The divorce would be finalized, the assets divided, the marriage officially dissolved. But tonight, I was standing in the ruins of my old life, completely free to build a new one. The storm was already beginning to clear,